Yes.
I hope.
Yes.
All right. All right. Well, thank you for ATTC and all of you for coming today to learn about SBIRT. We'll talk about the details of the model. And in preparation, usually when I teach, I like to interact with the group. And so I'm going to invite you through the chat box to, and Cindy, Cindy and I see Steve is there too. We'll monitor that, and feel free to interrupt me if we do need some elaboration. In preparation for this, it took me a while to pull all the pieces together, and there's a lot more pieces that could be covered in this model that in the time frame we won't have time to address certain aspects of it, particularly you know, the cultural adaptations, although I will speak about that, that you might want to consider, as well as spending time on screening tools and learning about how to use a motivational interviewing approach, and then how to deal with difficult scenarios like a patient who seems irritated, or somebody whom is a teenager, for example. How can I adapt the different models? So all of those are things that I noticed in preparation for today. And I want you to know that we're here at ATTC to support you beyond this training. So just please keep that in mind. And I'd be happy to answer questions along the way. So what I prepared for today is an overview of SBIRT with all the components. I have some video examples that I will show you. And what are some things to consider when you think about cultural adaptations, and then we'll wrap up at the end. We may take a little bit of a break about halfway through, so around 10 o'clock, 10:05, somewhere around there. We'll take a 5-minute break just for stretch, and then come on back and finish up. Before I launch into things, how many people in the audience have had some exposure to this particular model of screening and referral for care? And let's go to the chat box and see what people are saying. Any comments?
See, some say yes, some say no, some say in the past. Maybe we could do a quick poll to see how many people have experience.
Well, there's some people are brand new to it, some people quite a bit, some people moderately. Years ago, I did too. Okay. Some people have taught some of the screening tools, so you can co-train with me when we get to that aspect of it. Ken has done it since 2010, so feel free, if you do have something from your experience to add to this, I would be grateful to hear your perspective. So keep us going. Lots of people that are brand new to it. Okay, well, thank you for sharing. Let me move on. The goals for today, can everybody see the slides okay? Because sometimes I do this and the slides don't show up right. So are the slides showing up okay, Cindy, Steve?
Yes, they are.
No blocks, okay. So today, we want to present the ideas and concepts for screening and brief intervention and referral to treatment, or SBIRT. I'm going to show some video examples that I've broken down into presenting a screening tool, engaging an adolescent, and then a full model of a brief intervention to illustrate the different components. And then we'll talk about additional tools and then some resources that you can continue learning on. The good news in doing the research to present this training is there's tons of research about SBIRT. It is considered an evidence-based model. And somebody asked us before the training if it was evidence-based and if it was used in Native populations. And in doing the research briefly, I haven't done full extensive literature review, but I did show that it has been used not only in Native communities, but also in other communities, non-white communities, and the outcomes are fairly positive. So that's good to know that it is an adaptable tool to be able to use in Native communities. And it is considered an evidence-based, and in fact, it's been around for a very long time, well over 20 years. And a lot of the examples you're going to see are within a medical setting. However, it's being adapted and modified to work in behavioral health care settings as well. And as a clinician, I have a lot of time in the field in behavioral health, and as a clinician, it's very adaptable and usable in that environment from my experience. Okay. So what does it mean, SBIRT? Screening, it's assessing a person for risky substance use behaviors using standardized screening tools. I'd probably encourage, if you're not in behavioral health, it could be used for any, certainly any chronic medical condition, such as diabetes management, weight management, hypertension, mental health issues around depression and anxiety and trauma, like such as PTSD or chronic trauma symptoms, along with standardized screening tools. It's brief in the sense that the goal is to have a brief conversation. Usually it's a one-time only conversation that helps a person talk about risky behaviors related to, originally used with substance use. And it provides feedback and recommendations to the person based on standardized tools, and we'll talk about that later. So statistics for the group or the community, and how their behavior is matching with what's considered the norm in the community. It also integrates a lot of neuroscience, which is, I think, very helpful for people. And referral to treatment, if the person measures in a risky area, that the person has relationships with treatment resources where they can refer people for further assessment and possible treatment.
It was important for me to pay my respects. There were so many different people there, especially to hear.
So I have sound coming from somebody.
All the answers myself, I'm here to learn as much as I possibly can. And when I did get a chance to talk to the family, I was just thanking them for their strength. And
okay.
letting them know that
somebody's got a TV on, or
our cities, and make sure that we continue to fight, because obviously.
Could you put your
I think it's yeah, whoever the host is, Cindy.
Trying to help out, but it feels good that there is a certain amount of
that's not me. I don't have any. Minu, do you have? I see Minu.
We feel like we've been basically helping out on our own, so now we're starting to get some help.
So somebody could turn their mute button on. Thank you. All right, so what's the idea of SBIRT? SBIRT is a prevention approach from a public health perspective, and So it's really a nice model in that it's adaptable to primary prevention, secondary prevention, or tertiary prevention. The different levels being no, and I'm going to use substance abuse as the sample. So no use is primary. So secondary is use, but maybe in the risky area. So you want to prevent further development of a serious substance use problem. And then tertiary is somebody's got a high risk and they may need some early treatment interventions to keep the progression from causing more health problems. So the model with the screening tools is based on those risk levels, and from that, from this use of the screening, you can screen out people that are primary prevention, secondary prevention, and then screen in people who you might want to refer to get a full assessment, and then if based on the assessment, possibly be offered some treatment. The model also is highly dependent on an attitude, an approach with somebody that's motivational. So part of the job is to motivate and help people think through their healthy behaviors and their non-healthy behaviors, and to help them, help motivate them to want to improve their health with their permission. So what does that mean? Issues in cultural well-being. Here's some statistics. The SAMHSA, this is from a 2018 Monitoring the Future sample. 13% of Native Americans need substance use treatment, but only 3.5% actually get treatment. That's not only common in Native communities, but it's also common in the treatment community at large. We don't as a healthcare system provide enough treatment for the people that need it. In addition to that, especially in the more rural areas, there might be other mental health and substance use issues that can affect a referral or affect somebody's motivation or hope for care: transportation, inadequate health care, poverty, stigma, trauma and hopelessness, and also the effects that the community and their family and their overall wellness has on them. So that influence can affect individuals. And so when you're working with patients or clients, you want to validate their experience
but not blame them for having that experience, and help them resolve and provide hope for them, even when there's a lack of resources. There's still, I think, something that could be done to provide hope for people. How can you address those disparities? Well, certainly having culturally sensitive treatment programs, and that will vary from tribal community around the country or village life in Alaska. You know, it just depends if it's an urban Indian setting. You know, the adaptations from a general, but also from a local cultural language and specific area. Certainly a lot of non-Indian programs particularly are not necessarily culturally sensitive, but may be the only program, particularly in urban Indian settings, where they don't address appropriately the spirituality and the cultural identity of the patients, and the patients may not, if they're disaffiliated, they may not know the details of their cultural background. So part of that would be teaching people, the staff, and helping people to reconnect with their cultural identity and their spirituality through a variety of healing approaches that are integrated into the programs. If a health clinic or a program is on a reservation, they probably already do this. so it's strengthening that, and the SBIRT program doesn't interfere with that. You would have to adapt it to what makes sense to people. So indigenous knowledge, local knowledge unique to a given culture or society with its own theory, philosophy, scientific and logic validity, used as a basis for decision making for all of life's needs. So it's that combination of Western ideas with traditional ideas and how they can work together. So there's a lot of, for some communities, there's a lot of skepticism about how white man's knowledge can help them. So any research that's done, and I did find some research that was sensitive to Native traditions, language, culture that validate this approach. So having cultural sensitivity, being culturally competent, having humility when you're using a model that has been heavily researched, that there's some acknowledgement from the research world that it does deal with the sensitivity, the competence, and the being humble, entering into the community to offer this approach as one tool to help address those chronic health conditions that people see. So here is just an example for those communities that do use medicine wheels. Not all communities use medicine wheels, but one way I have used a medicine wheel is in assessment. So I did a lot of treatment, so it's really in my cultural heritage, medicine wheels are used, and I actually adapted a medicine wheel to use the ASAM model, the American Society of Addiction Medicine Patient Placement Criteria. I adapted it to a medicine wheel, and it seemed to work pretty well in the communities I was working with. Well, here's an example. So you can individualize, you can take a structure like this and individualize it to somebody in terms of screening, in terms of doing ongoing assessment, and also in terms of providing treatment. Okay. So why consider SBIRT? Well, let me back up a little bit. Let's take a break and talk about what you're hearing so far. Any comments that I need to pay attention to before I...
Okay, I love the medicine wheel tied into the ASAM.
Yeah, it was...
I see that.
Go ahead, yeah.
Available somewhere?
I can do a write-up for how I've used it, and we actually we put the dimensions in the medicine wheel, and then went from there. It's been pretty powerful, actually. I actually think it strengthens ASAM culturally. I teach a lot of ASAM. I've worked with Dr. Ming over the years, decades now, and we talked a lot about infusing culture, and I actually just created an ASAM medicine wheel that people really liked over the years. But yeah, let me know if you want me to send you some thoughts about that.
Absolutely, and I teach at the college here, the AOD classes. And
okay.
Because we're 20% of the county is Native, I bring all that into the school too. So, and we're doing ASAM next semester, using a couple of their books. So that would be awesome.
Okay, well, I'll get it done for you and send it on through ATTC. Okay.
Excellent.
So
thank you.
Yeah, if anybody else would like the write-up on that, just let Cindy know, and she can let me know.
And we'll send it out. Yeah. So Sarah was also asking if the stats you shared earlier were based on Native Americans living in the reservations or off the reservations, or both.
Both. Yeah, it's both. Check out if you're interested in statistics. It's a pretty good study. It's called Monitoring the Future, and they do the study every so often. They don't do it every year, but they do it every so often. But I usually go to the Native American section to see what they're saying, and of course, statistically, it's going to vary tribal community from village to village. So the statistic is a generalized thing. It may not be specific to your tribal community. And so your tribal community might be higher or lower based on your knowledge. So use your own knowledge also and your own awareness of what's happening in your community as well. Some it's not as high, some it's higher. It's helpful to know what's going on locally. So those are more national statistics. What else is going on in the chat box that we might want to pay attention to?
Yeah, it looks like everyone wants everyone wants it. So yeah.
Okay.
So
they like the ACM. Yeah. Okay. So I will work on that and get you something in the next within the next few weeks, and send it to Cindy and get it out to you. And feel free to use it. One of my goals in life right now, in my later life, is to have an open heart and share with the Native community what I've learned over the years or decades, and be available to advance what I can to help the people. And you and the people serving the people. All righty. And we can thank, I'm not sure who created this slide, but it wasn't me because I can't do fancy things like that, the arrow going around. I think it was Sean Bear. So I can send you the slide in and of itself and then work from there, because the arrows is kind of a fun movement thing. Okay, so why do thank you, by the way, why do SBIRT, routine and universal screening regardless of medical complaints? So some standardization is very important and helpful, so people kind of individually know where they stand with their health care. The screening tools are not only public domain, they've been validated across cultures to be effective and helpful. They're also pretty brief. Define substance use more as a continuum with the new diagnostic manuals. It's consistent with diagnosis if people are into diagnosing, so it's helpful in terms of prevention, secondary and tertiary. So whether someone's just at a use level, but maybe entering into a misuse level, it acknowledges that. Evidence-based, patient-driven, and I think it looks at something like a healthcare, particularly a chronic healthcare issue. It looks at it from a holistic approach. So you could focus briefly on a substance use as an example, or a mental health concern as an example. But it looks at, SBIRT was originally developed from a medical model. So it's one piece of the whole. And that's where it's pretty adaptable, especially if you're in a behavioral health setting. I worked in a setting where the person would come in for their medical appointment to see the nurse practitioner, the nurse, the doctor, whomever, and the practitioner would refer upon a screening to a behavioral health person who might have a little bit more time to just talk to them about what's going on in their life in terms of chronic issues, and then how to motivate them and help them figure out what they want to do with what the screening shows.
So let's talk about screening. We're going to move into that. So what does screening mean? Quick assessment and the severity. In the screening, because it's in a preventive healthcare model, it doesn't mean everybody you screen will end up needing a referral to treatment. They could need a referral to something else, like a dietitian or another type of specialist in the healthcare situation, or even to a local medicine person who could help them with a particular issue. So it just means that we are paying attention to what the next steps are. It could also mean that the screening identifies risky behavior and you as the practitioner wants to have further assessment. So you could screen, send someone to a program for further assessment, and then your job is done in terms of SBIRT, and then the person doing the assessment would then determine if there was a need for treatment beyond that. So that's what screening refers to in this model. Okay, pretty much this is kind of what does it provide? Immediate rule out of low risk users, high risk identification, context, etc. The things that I just mentioned. And notice the word benefit. You don't want to, in this model, because you're using a motivational approach, you're not really giving a lot of advice without permission. We'll talk about that later on as we go through the program. So in medical care, often they will see a problem, identify it, and they tell you what to do. Not all practitioners are like that, but many are like, this is what I recommend, or this is what I think you should do. And in this model, you see a problem, you provide feedback, and then you engage the person and ask them what they think about what they're hearing. And then you use their response to help them think through what is it that they may want to do. And then you don't get attached to their answer based on, some of them say, well, I don't think I have a problem. I don't want anything further from you. I don't want to talk about it. You basically leave the door open and say, okay, well, thank you for letting me talk to you about it. I appreciate the time you've taken to fill out the forms. If at any time you change your mind or you want to do another check-in about how you're doing, my door is open. It's sometimes difficult for healthcare providers to use that approach because they do have a lot of experience with patients, and they also see the severe, when things aren't done early, they see the severe forms of things, and they get frustrated that people don't listen to them. On the other hand, we found in behavioral change research that if you take the time to listen, people tend to get motivated through a helping relationship to want to do things. Even small change is considered successful. So here is the continuum of substance abuse used in this model. Experimental so on the far left, as you look at the screen, is abstinence, and that's primary prevention. And then you have experimental use, social use, and binge use, episodic use. So between social and binge could be considered, and experimental as secondary prevention after the behavior has started. And then the risky behavior is when possibly diagnostically they could qualify for a substance use disorder, or definitely are having an abusive pattern. That would be considered, and I'm working from an old model, so I apologize if people have a more up-to-date model of prevention, but that's the tertiary or third level of type of prevention where treatment would fit in. So here is another way of looking at it. Low risk or abstinence, in terms of population, and this is generalized across the U.S., 75% of the people we see are in the low risk or abstinence area, 20% in hazardous or harmful, and then the actual substance use disorder is actually smaller, 5%. So on the other side, you'll see there's no intervention. So you're just doing screening and feedback at that level to prevent harmful use. You do a brief intervention or brief treatment at the hazardous level, and then you do the referral, brief intervention and referral at the top end. So these numbers can change based on where you live and what the demographics are and so forth. So some of you might be familiar with the stages of change model. In that model, it's pretty similar to this. In the Prochaska DiClemente research, they found that 80% of people who access care for substance use behaviors actually occurred in the doctor's office, so in primary care. And the people that we see in treatment from the population that scored in the hazardous on up were the worst of the worst in terms of the treatment environment. So in other words, these were people that really needed a brief intervention, generally speaking, because they were referred to a treatment program. But most of the people that access or talk about drinking particularly, or mental health issues such as depression or anxiety, or drug, and when I say substance use, I'm including some, like particularly marijuana, access care through primary care. So this model really works well in a primary care setting, and it would be important if you're not in primary care, say you are in a treatment environment, that you have wraparound contact with folks in the primary care arena or social service areas such as case managers or dietitians or other people that social services where people access social services. So the screening actually occurs at that level, and at the treatment level, you can do screening to determine what level of care somebody might need. So in the ASAM model, for those of you who are familiar with ASAM, it would be a level 1 type of care, which is a low level of care for the severity of a problem that isn't so severe but still needs some treatment. Okay, so let's look at the validated screening tools. Anybody have any experience with any? These are the ones that are often used in the SBIRT model. Anyone have any experience with any of these screening tools? And if so, what are your thoughts about that?
So far, Annalise says yes. I don't know if there are others.
Anyone likes particularly? Like, for example, the audit. Yeah, it's used in Cherokee and North Carolina. Cherokee is one of the research studies that was done. Okay, so lots of you have had experience with a variety of different ones. Anyone having trouble accessing any of the screening tools? Yeah, the GAIN SS, yeah. Assist, yeah. Yeah. And you do want your screening tools to be user-friendly in the sense that you don't want to intimidate somebody by handing them a form or asking them questions that could be off-putting. So you can either do they can self screen by filling out the form. Yeah, I'm going to show you a video of a verbal conversation and how to do that with the screen. Yeah, the GAIN wasn't developed to be culturally sensitive. The version that I worked with when it was first created was really more for juvenile justice, and yeah, it's not necessarily culturally relevant, but that's an example of how you might have to adapt it without losing the validity. So taking the components and adapting it to the culture of the people you're working with. At the co-occurring, good. Is the AC dash okay? Is that a public domain instrument for co-occurring? Okay. You definitely don't want to create barriers for practitioners by not being able to have a screening tool that isn't free, basically. And you definitely want the practitioner to follow the instructions of how to score it and how to fill it out. Oh, that's great. John has sent a web link. In doing the research for this presentation, there's several state SBIRT programs going on, and in Oregon, there's quite a nice one where all the screening tools are on a single web page. And I was going to show you. Let's see if I can get out of here. Let's see. Hello, everybody. Yeah, there's a website in Oregon that has all the, oh, here we go. Has all the screening tools. Oh well. We've got one from John. There's check your local state to see if they have an SBIRT program, because they may have those screening tools plus some of the others available to you, just easy, including the instructions on how to fill it out. Okay, I need to get to a YouTube, and let me get to my. So let's take a look at. And let me know if you can see this. Can people see this? Cindy?
No, the screen is not up here.
Okay. I wanted to show this video, somebody doing an audit in a certain manner. So how do I do that? Let's see.
Let's see the screen share word.
Yeah. Where is the screen share again? I lost it.
It's on the bottom.
Bottom.
Way on the bottom.
Bottom, yeah.
There we go.
Mine is green.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up. There's something blocking it. Okay, technical problem for Kathy. All right. Okay, well, I had this all set up and I need to do a share screen. Oh. Especially for those who are not, okay, how do I get back to share screen here? Any suggestions out there? Here. Okay, share screen. Here it is. Okay, are you guys ready? Everybody see the screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, let's check. So this is a woman who's presenting, who's actually interviewing somebody using an interview format with the audit. So let's just take a quick look.
Did you hit the button that says audio, share audio too? So if you go back to the initial share screen, there's like a little tiny spot at the bottom that you can click that says share audio.
Okay, I'm going to stop it because
Would you like me to share it, Katie? What's Tomlin?
okay, so I'm having audio problems. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay, so people can't hear it. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, we can hear it.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Zoom, share screen. Ah, here we go. Sorry about that. There's all these details that I forget. Okay, let's see if this works.
Well for you. I'm glad you came in to get some extra support. It could really be a great step towards changing things for the better.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Well, I'd like to start out by asking you some questions about your alcohol use. We ask all clients standard questions around substances because it can really help us to achieve the best outcomes of coming in for services. Because alcohol can affect many areas of our clients' lives, it's important for us to know how much you usually drink, whether or not you've experienced any negative problems from drinking. It should only take a couple of minutes. Would it be okay to continue?
Well, I guess so, but I don't really have a problem with alcohol.
Okay. I really appreciate you being so open to discussing this with me today. How often do you have a drink containing alcohol?
Well, I don't drink on the days that I work. Fridays and Saturdays, sometimes Sunday too.
Okay, so 2 to 3 times a week. And how many drinks containing alcohol do you have on a typical day when you're drinking?
Not that much. I'll have maybe 4 beers and then a couple of shots, so I don't know, maybe a total of 6.
Okay, so it sounds like a standard for you might be 6. And how often do you have 4 or more drinks on one occasion? Based on what you've told me so far, it sounds like this is weekly for you. Is that right?
Yeah, I think weekly is fair.
Okay. How often during the last year have you found that you were not able to stop drinking once you started?
Never. I can always stop when I want to. Like I said, I don't have a drinking problem.
Okay. It sounds like you can decide how much to drink and stick with it. I have just a few more questions for you. Thank you so much for sharing this information with me. How often during the last year have you failed to do what was normally expected of you because of drinking?
Well, I called in sick to work one time because I was so hungover. I guess you could consider that failing to do what was expected of me.
Okay. Drinking interfered with your work responsibilities that one time, though it sounds like it's not a regular occurrence for you. How often during the last year have you needed an alcoholic drink in the morning to get yourself going after a heavy drinking session?
Never. I'm not an alcoholic.
Okay, never. Next question is, how often during the last year have you had a feeling of guilt or regret after drinking?
Well, I felt pretty guilty that time that I called in sick. That's just not like me.
Okay. Sounds like being on top of your work responsibilities is important to you. And how often during the last year have you been unable to remember what happened the night before because you'd been drinking?
Oh, never. I don't black out.
Okay. You don't experience blackouts when you drink? Have you or someone else been injured as a result of your drinking?
No, never anything crazy like that. I keep it under control when I drink.
So keeping your drinking under control is important to you. You don't want it to affect your life negatively.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. One last question for you. Has a friend, relative, doctor, or other health worker ever been concerned or suggested you cut down on your drinking?
Well, my wife got on my case pretty hard that time that I called in sick to work, but I think she was just blowing it out of proportion. I know when it's time to be serious and work and when it's time to let loose and have some fun.
So you like to keep a healthy balance between work and fun.
Yeah, that's right.
When was it last that your wife expressed concern about your drinking?
I'd say that was about a month ago when I called in sick.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all this information with me. It really gives us more information to work with as we address some of your future concerns.
Audit scores of 8 or more are recommended as indicators of hazardous and harmful use, as well as possible alcohol dependence. Scores between 8 and 15 are more appropriate for simple advice focused on the reduction of hazardous drinking. Scores between 16 and 19 suggest brief counseling and continued monitoring. Scores of 20 or above warrant further diagnostic evaluation for alcohol dependence. This client scored 14 on the audit. A brief intervention focused on the reduction of hazardous drinking using simple advice and motivational enhancement techniques is most appropriate.
Okay. Let's go back. Here is the website for screening tools. Right here, this is from Oregon. It has pretty much all of the screening tools. This is for pregnant women. And I don't think it has the gains up here, but that's easy to find. But here is the website for that. Okay. Comments, questions? Let me show you this. Here are the screening tools for the different populations. Yeah, you can see that in the when we send you the PowerPoint. Oh. Okay. So, let's go to the chat. Zoom purgatory. Yeah, I know how that feels. Yeah, if you notice during the video segment, she was using a lot of tools from motivational enhancement or motivational interviewing, and so it's really asking permission, reflecting, asking clarifying questions. And, you know, as again, a person could get kind of nervous when asking some, you know, sensitive questions like that. So you definitely want to be sensitive about those kind of questions, especially if people are nervous about talking about a behavior that maybe they feel ashamed for, or they maybe are ambivalent about, they don't want to stop, but they understand why people would want them to stop. And you do want to keep the judgment, the attitude in a spirit and style of motivational interviewing, which is really non-judgmental, open-minded, asking permission, open-ended questions, lots of reflections, and lots of affirmations throughout the process. Okay. This is a good spot for us to take just a brief break, but trying to get out of this. There we go. Let's just take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and talk about the next piece of this, the brief intervention. And we'll come back at I have on my time about 11:58, so 5 minutes from where you're at. Come on back and we'll continue on. And
thank you, Dr. Tomlin.
There. Okay, so we'll come back in 5.
Okay, and then we'll answer some of the questions I see in the chat box.
Okay, I've got this thing that says your screen sharing is paused, so I want to make sure that people are seeing what I'm seeing. Cindy?
Yeah, I see something about SBIRT, Oregon.
Okay, so can you also see the PowerPoint?
No. So that might be.
Okay. Well, I minimized that. New share. Oh, okay. I see what I have to do. All right. So I'll just put this back up and come back. We'll come back in 5. So can you put, Cindy, are you putting everybody on mute? Or where are we at?
Yeah, I think everyone else is on mute.
Okay, so let me take a look at what people are saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
James said he has found these screening tools to be very helpful in
Yeah.
discrepancy between client goals and pattern. Yeah.
So I muted you, but then I turned you back on.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure it's virtual is nice on one level, but not so nice when you want to connect and you don't know how to work the program at an expert level. Although I'm getting better at it, I still need some work.
Yeah, mid-semester my college went to Zoom from Classroom. And it was like, the students didn't know how to do it, and of course I didn't. So it was
yeah.
In our work, the clinic uses a totally different one, of course.
Of course. And then you get one that people don't like and they hold on to it, and then they finally switch. And yeah, learning new software is always a challenge. But
the work one is designed to be HIPAA compliant.
Yeah.
Here, it has a lot less features. We're all adapting.
Okay. Well, I don't feel so bad, Ken, because when I listen to the news and I see how they're struggling with it, I figure, okay, it's just normal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I feel good about it because my 18-year-olds are having problems with it too.
Now that's a indictment on a piece of software, is if an 18-year-old can't do it.
Yeah.
Tony has an interesting question, a petition for involuntary commitment. Well, if it's a screening process, it depends on what you're screening for, but possibly. If you're talking about screening for substance abuse, I would say probably. Or co-occurring. That's a tough one, though.
No, not in California.
No,
Yes.
Really?
No.
There you go. Yeah, screening could lead to an assessment, and the assessment could substantiate. Yeah, that's probably true. Okay, yeah, so a screening tool for substance abuse and co-occurring would be helpful, for sure. Assuming the person is capable of answering the questions. I don't know what kind of involuntary, if it's a mental health involuntary screen, as long as they understand the questions cognitively and can communicate that. If they don't, then possibly not. Screening tools are very specific and definitely helpful with an engaged individual, but if you can't trust the information, then that's another story.
Yeah, the 3 counties I've been associated with 5150s, this might initiate a call to the crisis team or someone that could write the order. But the information and the person doing it plays a big factor in it too.
Yeah, so, absolutely. So Brandy,
tools they actually created the craft for teens. You could take the concepts in the craft and modify it from maybe being more culturally relevant. And it depends on how old the teen is. So for example, if they're an older teen, 17, 18, possibly in that range, the audit might be helpful. If they're younger, obviously, you'd have to use a different tool. If it's primary, secondary, or tertiary prevention. But kids who have an established pattern of use could use an audit as well, definitely. Yeah, thanks, James. It sounds like you've used the audit with teens. I've used it with young adults and teens, and it works okay. It works pretty good. Okay, I think 5 minutes is up. I didn't check for sure, but I think I'm gonna resume. Are we good?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna go back to this slide. Can you see it? Okay. So let's talk about the B of the SBIRT, the brief intervention. This area of this model is where you're using that non-judgmental, engaging approach that you saw in the video. Often brief interventions are done in individual appointments. So it could be a behavioral health appointment in a primary care setting. It could be in a helping session with somebody, and it could be in a counseling session. So this is the only slide that I'm devoting to MI just because it's too much to go into MI. I teach MI, I've done it for decades now. But in terms of what are the key components, one of the definitions, especially for non-counselors, non-addiction counselors, one of the definitions they offer in the text, this is from the 3rd edition, is having a client-centered, engaged, meaning collaborative, where you guide and ask for the wisdom and strength of a person's own motivation for change. So there's a way of doing that. And one of the ways is through the spirit of MI, which is respect, collaboration, showing compassion, and calling forth from the wisdom. That's my rewrite. Because illicit is one of those words that sometimes even I don't understand. So it's really calling forth from the person that you're talking with, their own personal knowledge, experience, wisdom, to help them change and motivate them towards a healthier lifestyle. So here's another way of looking at it. What does building rapport or collaboration look like? How I talk to somebody and how I understand them. So in the video, you saw the word reflect come up quite a bit. So she was reflecting back, which is to show that I'm listening and I understand, that she shows respect, that she expresses empathy. And particularly when you're doing an audit, if you notice, she did hear what the person said. So when she was doing her reflection, she made sure that she used some of the same words that he said so as not to label. Compassion, trust, and an additional one is cultural interest. So when I work with Native peoples, I'm often careful about not offending by saying, what do you think about your own experiences with X, Y, or Z behavior? And then how does your family, your loved ones, what does your community say about it? And what is your community saying to you about it? Versus putting them on the spot. So those are some other ways of thinking about engagement. Here's an asking permission statement. May I ask you some personal questions that we ask all of our clients? So one of the key ways of engaging in this model is to let them know you're not just pointing them out, but you're asking all the people that you work with. And then express the purpose. By asking, it will help us to come to the best plan to increase the likelihood that you can get the best possible care. So this is the purpose of it, is my intention is for you to get the best possible care. That it's confidential. You'll see a clip where a woman is working with a teenager. Confidentiality is really important, that it won't be gossiped about or spread about, and that they are in control in terms of it. Anytime you feel uncomfortable, we can stop. So this is a way to engage and enter into before you start asking the questions, or if they self-administered the screening tool, that before you look at the screening tool and look at the results, that you have that attitude coming into the conversation. So, yeah, so let me show you that example. Here we go again. This is with a teenage boy. Oh, I got to go back, don't I? See how quick I can learn. Okay. I'm at share screen. Where is... I got to get the sound back up. Okay, help. Somebody, I need to get the sound back up. So how do I do that again? Anybody?
Have you gone to the link?
Okay, so I'm exiting my PowerPoint. I'm on the internet with the video, and then where do I go for Zoom to show to share sound?
When you first hit the share screen button, then there's like a little box at the bottom.
You have to check the box, remember?
Yeah, I know, but I'm trying to get to the box.
You might have to close out of the view.
Oh, I guess that's okay. So I do have to close out every time. Okay, got it. All right. I forgot that step.
You got this, Doc.
I'm working on it. I really am working on it. But it's, you know, it's mind-blowing for me sometimes.
I can hear the neurons popping.
They're popping, yeah. Okay. Okay, hold on. Go back to Zoom. Damn. Now you're going to hear me start swearing. Okay, share screen. Okay, computer sound was already on. Darn. Okay, I'm showing the video now. Okay.
Jacob is a 14-year-old boy presenting for a sports physical exam. He completed the CRAFT screening tool and answered yes to the relax question. The physician has completed the physical exam.
So Jacob, everything looks very normal on your physical exam. Do you have any questions for me?
No.
Okay. I see that you filled out our alcohol and drug questionnaire. Is it okay if we go through this together?
Sure.
Okay. What we talk about is confidential. I only tell your parents about what we say if you give your permission or if I become worried about a danger to you or to someone else. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's take a look. So I see that you have marked that you sometimes use alcohol and that you have used alcohol to relax, feel better about yourself, or fit in. Do you mind telling me a little bit more about your alcohol use?
It's not a big deal. Sometimes with my friends, we'll drink a few beers and when we're hanging out or when we're at a party, and sometimes rum and cokes.
Okay, so how many do you usually have at a time?
3 or 4 probably. I don't keep track.
Okay. And how often?
Probably about once or twice a month.
Okay. So you drink with friends, sort of 3 or 4 beers or mixed drinks 1 or 2 times a month. How long have you been doing that?
Probably since last October.
So for about 6 months. I'm curious, what do you like about drinking alcohol?
What do I like about it?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just fun to drink with my friends. Like when we're at a party at someone else's house, and we're drinking with other people that we don't know. It tastes good.
Okay. So it sounds like you feel relaxed and have fun when you're drinking with friends, and you like the taste.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm also curious, are there any parts about your alcohol use that you don't like?
I don't like when I get sick in the mornings because of hangovers, and when I start throwing up, and I don't like that.
Have you ever experienced a blackout, like when you've been drinking and you wake up and you don't remember what happened?
No, but that happened to someone I know, though.
And have you had any problems related to your drinking alcohol, like at home or school or somewhere else?
One time I missed first period at school because I had a hangover and I was late getting up. And Mom got mad at me because I wouldn't get out of bed, and she said she knew I had a hangover.
Have you told your mother that you drink with your friends?
No, but I got grounded for 2 weeks after that.
So more negative things about your drinking, like getting into trouble with your mom and missing a class at school when you had a hangover?
Yeah, but I only missed school once.
Okay. I see on the questionnaire that you have not ridden in a car with someone who's been drinking, and you haven't driven a car after you've been drinking. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's great, and I hope you continue to avoid those things. As your doctor, I want you to know that I'm concerned about your drinking. When teens drink, things can go wrong, like injuring yourself. Even when you don't drink to excess, though, your brain is still developing and is very sensitive to the effects of alcohol.
Okay.
That's why I recommend that all my adolescent patients not drink at all. So if you were to think today about how ready you feel to stop drinking alcohol on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 not being ready at all and 10 feeling very ready, what number would you pick?
Probably a 5.
A 5. So I'm curious, why didn't you pick a lower number, like a 2 or a 3, that would mean you're only a little bit ready to stop drinking?
Well, I guess I'm just tired of getting in trouble.
Okay. What could you do to avoid getting into trouble?
Not drink.
Have you ever tried not drinking or stopping drinking?
No, not really.
What some people your age do is try stopping drinking for a period of time just to see what that feels like.
I could probably do that.
So how long do you think you could go without drinking?
I don't know.
Do you think you could go 2 months without drinking?
Yeah, probably.
What things would make it easier for you to not drink?
I could probably drink something else when my friends start drinking, like just Coke.
Anything else to make things easier for you?
I could probably hang out with some of my friends who don't drink. We're inviting them to parties and having fun, because not everyone drinks at parties.
Okay. Is there anybody in your life that you can talk to about this who'll give you some support for not drinking?
Yeah, my friends who don't drink would probably be happy that I'm not drinking either, and they'd support me.
Great. So you've come up with some reasons to stop drinking, like having hangovers and throwing up and getting into trouble. And you've developed some strategies to try to not drink, like spending more time with friends who don't drink or having non-alcoholic drinks when people around you are drinking alcohol. I think that's a great plan. I'm really proud of you for giving this a try. How about if I have you make an appointment for 2 months from now, and then I'll see you back and we can see how things are going.
Okay.
Okay. What do y'all think? Oh. Yep.
Hi.
Hi.
I thought the interview.
Hello?
Go ahead, Mary.
Hi, Mary. Where are you, Mary?
Here I am now.
There you are. Hi.
I said, I thought that interview seemed like a little too easy, you know.
Yeah.
And when I do that, when I interview, now these are college students that I'm working with, you know, the responses are, you know, they're much more resistant. Let's just say.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this was a 14-year-old versus, yeah, college student is different age, different developmental stuff. In terms of the process, let's just look at it as an example of the process. So let's focus on what she did that is consistent with a brief intervention, some tools from a brief intervention perspective. So what did she do from a brief intervention perspective that you noticed?
She left the door open for him to come back, and
mm-hmm.
the always correct thing to do no harm,
mm-hmm.
so that they don't leave with that bad taste in their mouth of F you, I'm never going to talk to a counselor again.
Right, yeah. Yeah, you definitely don't want to create a relationship or a conversation where it's off-putting for the person. So I saw somebody also say she asked open-ended questions. She was non-judgmental. There's a section where she does what they call motivational enhancement. So there were very specific tools that she did, which is why I show that video. It is easy. I have worked with, that's the age population where I spent most of my career, which was young adults and adolescents and their families. And so you can get a 14-year-old that is somewhat naive in terms of their use of alcohol, and the I don't know response is really developmentally really common. So it's really enhancing the motivation for somebody. So
Dr. Tomlin,
yeah,
I was going to ask the group, and I know you know this, but I was going to ask the group, what was one question that the doctor asked that almost seemed to surprise the patient? She asked it early on.
Right.
Very important question that she asked.
Why he didn't choose a number 2?
That was a little later.
Yeah. This was right away. She asked him something and I think he repeated the question back because.
What do you like about drinking?
Yes.
Yeah.
About that. Why is that important?
That's
well, by asking that question, it allowed her to then follow up with, what don't you like about drinking? Which allowed her to establish a discrepancy.
I don't disagree with you, Robert, but I think more importantly, it allowed for her to not take the role of, I'm going to make you do something, or I'm going to tell you what to do. So she wanted to find out what role alcohol's played for him and what he liked about it. This might lead into some reasons why he doesn't like it, as you said. So that's you're on the right track.
It could also lead to it could also help you understand why they wouldn't change.
Well,
another reason is working with his ambivalence.
See,
because he wants to and he doesn't want to, and so she's leaning in what's so good about it, and then that helps go to the other direction.
Yeah. Adolescence is a state of ambivalence in general, but when it comes to their particular behaviors, especially around substance use, it's pretty pronounced. And Mary, you're going to say something.
Yeah, I thought, and I don't know, Steve, if this is what, but one of her questions that was real interesting to me, she said on a scale of 1 to 10, and he selected 5. And when she said, well, gee, I thought you might select lower than that. So he was acknowledging that there was problems, you know, that, and because 0 would be no, I don't have any problems at all, or I don't want any help. But I thought that having him select a number to describe that was very effective, because then she could go from there with him.
Well, also that's it's eliciting change talk, which shines a light on the intrinsic motivation that this kid already has.
It's eliciting their own motivation to maybe want to change, but it's also acknowledging why they wouldn't want to change, but the force of it is more towards staying on why he would want to change. So even though he's saying, I don't have a problem, when she was using particular motivational strategies, developing discrepancy. The most important thing she did was, and I know it was only a 6-minute video, but the most important thing she did was she right up front attended to confidentiality. Because a lot of young adults and teenagers, that's their biggest worry, is who's going to hear about this? And am I going to get in trouble? And so she attended to that right away. And, you can, when you're actually working with a teen and not doing a 6-minute video, you actually spend a little bit more time on that up front. So she was doing some very specific things that were tools and strategies using a motivational approach. Any other comments, any burning desires before I move on to something else? Yeah, it is, teen trust is super, super important. And it's a dance that we do as providers with children because sometimes some of the things they tell us we have to disclose. And so we have to be very careful that we are clear with them that if they say something where they're in danger, particularly, that we have to break the confidentiality. So that it's important for them to know that up front. And another tip for working with teens is, especially if they're in the juvenile justice system, is the sharing of urine drug screens if you're a treatment provider. I always tell the kids that I'll work with them to help them resolve their probation issues, which requires reporting progress in care. And for some probation officers, they want to know whether they're using or not. So I often will say that we will address that together, so that they're always aware of when I'm talking to their PO and what I'm saying to their PO. And that has worked for me over the years pretty, where you keep that trust. That's why I do it. Okay, let's go back to presentation. So the purpose of a brief intervention, as you've seen, is to educate, raise awareness. The other thing that she did in that video segment, which I may not have as much time to talk about, but it's certainly about advice giving. So in a brief intervention, particularly outside of a treatment environment, you have to at times say, well, this is what I would recommend to you based on my knowledge and experience with this particular issue. And so she did a little bit of that before she launched into eliciting and asking for his experiences with drinking. And you saw the motivational interviewing approach. Educate, increase awareness about whatever behavioral change is being discussed. Helping the patient make choices that reduces their risk. That's really important. And I think she did that. I think she did move a little fast. You may spend a little bit more time with somebody than as fast as she went. And she did address readiness a little bit. She didn't really talk about ambivalence up front. I tend to talk about ambivalence with a teenager, and I ask them, the first thing I do is I ask them, do you know what the word ambivalence means? Especially if I see it, and it's pretty clear he had ambivalence. And then I say, well, it's kind of like, you know, wanting two things at the same time. So breaking things down for the mind of a teenager to be able to access their experience of ambivalence. So what's our role in that scenario? Provide feedback, which she did, offer information, understand, explore, assist, support, give advice. It says, if requested. With an adult, you offer advice, but you ask permission. So in a brief intervention, you're definitely asking permission. And so a lot of this has to do with, where do I assess a person's at in terms of their process of change. And then here we go with the ambivalent discussion. And I use this with adults as well as with teenagers. And I think the more you can talk about it, but also there's a presentation that I do just on ambivalence, different types of ambivalence. This can be found in the Motivational Interviewing 3rd edition. There's several chapters and sections on how do you talk to somebody about ambivalence. This is also where things don't work out often in treatment. It wouldn't surprise me if he came back and he didn't do anything. But the point is, you don't want him to come, you want people to come back and say, I didn't do anything, because that's really what you want to understand, is how ambivalent is somebody. So she tried, she tried to do a readiness assessment. Frankly, with teenagers, whenever I've asked to do a scaling, it's really, a lot of them don't take to the numbers, but even some adults. But you can use a visual, like you can do an importance ruler. Here's an example. How important is it for you? Why? One thing she didn't do is she didn't ask, well, what would it take for you to move up to a 6? And so depending on the person, if they do give you a number, you can use the scale, the ruler itself, and you could just go up and down on the ruler and say, what would it take for you to move forward on the ruler, what would it take for you to, why did you not pick a 0 instead of a 5, which is assessing importance. Then there's the ruler about confidence. In the Prochaska research, 80% of the issues of why people didn't change is they didn't feel confident that they could change. So that's pretty telling. So confidence has to do with, if you wanted to change, how confident are you that you could change? And so ableness. Again, using the confidence ruler, lower, higher number. And what you'll find is you'll get a lot of conversation about why they don't want to change, and you'll get a lot of conversation about why they do want to change. When you hear the don't want to change part of it, you acknowledge it, but then you move on towards the why would you change. So that's more motivational. And then finally, the readiness. So I have a couple of handouts I can offer to you that I've scripted. I don't necessarily use a readiness ruler as much as I just do it conversationally. I have a graph that I use that actually teenagers really like, and for those of you working with younger age kids, actually adults like it too, but it works really well with younger age kids because it's more visual. So if you want me to send that, just let me know. Okay, I heard a sound and okay. I'm hearing a sound on my end. Okay, I think I figured it out. Okay, that was me. What are people's experiences with doing readiness? Do you do a readiness scale? What has happened when you've done it? What are some of the challenges that you've run into before I move on to negotiating the next steps? Yeah. Okay. Anybody do readiness already and have had some examples of how things work for them? Readiness is a key part of early change process when doing motivational enhancement. It's hard to move forward without addressing it. And certainly in terms of how people respond to it, it's done within that spirit and style of motivational interviewing. Okay. All right, let's talk about how you negotiate the next steps in a brief intervention. So what I did is I just created some open-ended questions that you could ask when you get to that point of things to consider that require more than a yes or no response. And this is a sensitive area in the intervention because you are always attuning to not putting somebody off. You want to make sure that you're still engaged with them and they're still open to what you have to say. So when you think about how to improve your overall health, how does your use of blank blank factor into your thoughts and feelings? It's pretty non-threatening and it's really focusing on health versus stigmatizing somebody. That's one question you can ask. If people are ready to proceed, what steps do they need to take? Always ask them what might get in their way to help problem solve that. Ask them if they need any more information. And then the advice giving is, can I offer or may I offer you some information to help you make the best decision going forward? So that's where from your role, whatever your role is, you express that if you have any concerns, what those concerns are, and then you ask them what they think about your expression. And then you offer, my advice to you would be to X, Y, or Z, depending on what your role is. And then what does your family say about it? What are others saying? And then what are your reasons? Like, would you even thinking about it? Well, why would you even think about it? There's a whole slew of questions that you could ask, but these are written with a strategy in mind, which is to keep the engagement, to be supportive, to ask them to offer their solutions. They have better solutions than you do most of the time. And how can you be helpful to them to resolve any concerns? Okay, we have one more example, and this is a brief intervention offering information and advice and negotiating a change plan. So let me stop share. See, it only took me 2 tries this time. Let me go to share screen. Share sound, sound's up. Okay. Oops. I have to go back to YouTube. This is an interesting one because this kind of gives you a sense of a full brief intervention, integrating everything that we've talked about. See if I can pull it up. And by the way, I did a review of all the various SBIRT videos that are out there. So I just there were so many that I just kind of picked and choose some that I thought were a good representation. Let me go back to my slide. And this will be we're getting towards the end of our time. So this will be, I'll show a video and then I'll come back and do some summary. And this is from Colorado. So this is kind of a nice one I noticed that Colorado had quite a few video segments, although this one's not popping up. Here it is.
There's nothing on the screen. Like, I don't see a video playing.
Yeah. Same here.
Same.
You don't see a video?
No.
Okay, hold on. I thought I was getting better at this. Sorry.
Progress, not perfection, Doc.
I know. Share. Let me know if you could at least see.
Yeah, I see the YouTube.
You can now? Okay. Yeah. Here we go.
How are you?
Can you restart it, please?
Well, we're getting through it. Thankfully, I have real.
Thank you.
A brief intervention is a short, motivational conversation to provide feedback and encourage change. Anna is 47 years old. She's at the clinic to monitor mild hypertension. She's been trying to lose weight and get regular physical activity. Anna answered 2 brief screening questions about alcohol. First, how many drinks do you have on average in a week? And second, how many times in the past year have you had 4 or more drinks in one day? Anna reported 18 drinks on average per week, and once in the past year, 4 or more drinks in a day. This is a positive brief screen. Further screening can be carried out using the audit or another validated screening questionnaire. Here is the brief intervention provided to Anna by a health professional.
Hey Anna, how's it going?
It's going okay. I've been going through a pretty bad divorce, and it's been really hard on my kids and I.
I'm so sorry to hear that. Divorce is very difficult. How are you coping?
Well, we're getting through it. Thankfully, I have really good friends, and my goal is just to be for my kids. They need me right now.
So having good friends is helping you through this?
Yeah, that's helpful. The hard part is I am having a really hard time sleeping at night, and I'm just wondering if I need some medication to sleep.
Well, major life transitions and stress can definitely interfere with sleep. There are some other things that can interfere with sleep as well, like alcohol. Is it okay if we take a moment to talk about that?
To talk about alcohol? I guess so.
Yeah, well, we ask everyone about their drinking because of its effect on your health. So you said you have about 18 drinks a week on average, and then once in the last year you had 4 more drinks. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I usually have 2 or 3 glasses of wine at night, and then I was at a wedding a little bit, about half a year ago, and I had more than 3 drinks there.
Okay, so I want to let you know that lower risk drink guidelines for women are no more than 7 drinks in a week, so on average about 1 a day, and never more than 3 drinks in a single occasion.
Lower risk for what?
So having more than those limits can interfere with your health both in short term and in the longer term. One way is that it does interfere with sleep. So even though it may help you get to sleep sooner, it actually doesn't allow you to stay asleep.
Wow, that sounds exactly like me. I fall right to sleep, and then wham, 1 or 2 in the morning, I am wide awake.
Okay, so you've noticed how it affects your sleep. And then also over the long term, it can start raising your blood pressure. How do you feel about that information?
I actually have never really thought about it. I just knew that it helped me relax to have a couple glasses of wine when I got home and de-stress in the evening.
So you never considered how it might affect your health?
No, and I didn't know it affected my blood pressure at all.
Yeah, so what's the next step you might want to take?
I guess cutting back might be one idea. Did you say only 1 drink a night, though?
Yeah, that's right. So on average, about 1 drink a night, and then never more than 3 in a single occasion for women. So you mentioned some reasons why you might want to make that change. What else motivates you to think about that?
Well, if I could sleep better at night, and I'm thinking about the cost. If the cost was a little less, that would probably be helpful also.
So it sounds like you can think of several reasons why cutting back might be helpful. So I'm curious, on a scale of 0 to 10, how ready do you feel to cut back? If 0 is not at all and 10 is you're extremely ready.
I'm not sure, maybe about a 5. But listen, I'm really not sure this is going to work. I want to sleep better. I'm not sure though.
So what makes you say a 5 and not a lower number?
Well, if it lowered my blood pressure, that would be great. And if I slept better, I know that I'd be more likely to take that walk before work, and that would help my stress and my blood pressure.
Well, it is totally up to you. My job is just to help you consider some reasons why cutting back might be good and how we can keep you as healthy as possible. What challenges do you think would be in the way?
Well, it's kind of mindless pouring 2 or 3 glasses of wine at night. So I guess I would just not refill. And then I'd also need to call my friends and let them know that I was making this health change. And then also I'm remembering how bad I felt. I was miserable the next morning when I had more than that at that wedding.
So you don't want that to happen again?
No, not at all.
So it sounds like you would be starting out with this change by not refilling your glass after that first glass of wine and cutting back that way, and then telling your friends that you're making this change for health reasons.
Oh, that's right.
I think this is a really good place to start. Thank you for taking the time to talk about this with me, and I wish you the best.
Thanks, and thanks so much for listening.
Multiple brief interventions may be more effective than a single brief intervention. Many types of health professionals can provide effective brief interventions.
Okay. Back again. Thoughts? Comments? Okay.
I thought she moved pretty quickly. And in a lot of clients that would evoke a lot of resistance. It didn't in this vignette, but it seemed like a lot of clients would react as if they were being pushed.
Yeah. Well, again, the video samples are just to show you the process more than being, because you're going to run into more resistance possibly. And it's really to show the tools of a brief intervention more than what you might run into in your world. So that means that you would probably, obviously 6 minutes is pretty brief. So for many of you, you're going to be taking a little bit more time and working that conversation in a more of a motivational way. So it was really to demonstrate particular skills that you could use. But I think you have a good point. I mean, things are not like as smooth as the videos are showing. Of course, they are only 6 minutes as well. And that's one of the, for a 2-hour presentation on this, to me, one of the disadvantages is not having time to talk about those more resistant scenarios and how would you intervene in a motivational way with someone who's a little bit more resistant, maybe because they're feeling pushed into talking about something they're not ready to talk about. Let me just we're getting towards the end of our time together. So let me just go to a wrap up. So here are some of the key points. The SBIRT, SBIRT, is designed for quick screening on the severity of a difficult behavioral change. In most of the examples, and how it started was with substance abuse. It may or may not lead to a referral to treatment. It's not assessing and it's not treatment. It's really a motivational intervention with feedback and depending on your role, offering some advice on how to improve a particular difficult behavior, often a chronic behavior. You would be raising awareness, you would be talking about risks, and you would be practicing the concepts of motivational interviewing or motivational enhancement. A referral for treatment idea is really the soft handoff, the wraparound service, and then a follow-up. We didn't have time to talk about the follow-up, but say with the teenager, he doesn't show for the next appointment, you definitely would use the time to call the teenager and say, hey, let's just check in with each other. How are you doing and how did it go? So that's another aspect of the SBIRT model. So here are the steps. You bring up raise the awareness or bring up the subject, provide feedback from a screening tool, enhance motivation, negotiate and plan for the next steps, and then the follow-up as needed. And then their tools and the strategies that we use that operationalize this. And then further things you can do, getting motivational interviewing, training and supervision, reading, you know, Oregon and Colorado and other states, and New York has one. I looked in South Dakota. South Dakota has an SBIRT manual. At the federal level, there's lots of training you can get on SBIRT. Reading more about the screening tools, looking at YouTube for examples, and then contacting us at ATTC or through your supervisor for additional support as needed. So that's what I have for you today. Any final comments or questions are always appreciated. I believe somebody is going to give you a certificate, but it's not going to be me. I think it's Cindy. So follow up with Cindy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Just please send me an email if you need a certificate, CU certificate for this training.
It felt like a brief introduction to brief screening, but there's a lot of other things that
We'll see what comes out.
that some practice would help, and also your setting. You know, like what setting are you in, and how you could adapt this culturally, and then also to your setting and to your role. We didn't get to do much of that, but I appreciate your time and feedback. We appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tomlin, and thank you, everyone.